Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday morning, chat room. And to everybody, hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving. Um, nice to see you in the chat room. JR Mats, nice to see you. Gallo, have a great day playing golf. And so let's just get into it. We're talking baseball. The baseball forecaster came out this just a couple nights ago, right before Thanksgiving. And it's, of course, the big question is, how are we going to rank players going into the drafts this year? How much do we put into 2020 stats? And I'm going to talk about two pitchers that had excellent seasons this past year that might be flying under the radar. And we're going to talk about the baseball forecasters. Ron Chandler did an intro, and he actually surveyed all of the Tout Wars participants. Lenny and I were involved in this, and so he, in the baseball forecaster for this year, he put the results in there. We're going to go over a couple questions and see like where you guys stand as far as how much weight do we put into 2020. How looking at the trends and how much do we trust trends, or do we, because there are trends and there are certain aspects that stabilize quickly with batters and pitchers. So we'll talk about that. And it's just a big question mark heading into the 2021 season. One thing's for sure. Right now, they have already put out the schedule. It's 162 games. It's a normal season. How long will that happen? How long will it stay like that? Maybe if certain things change, or if they don't change, I mean, it's questionable. So you're going to have to just be prepared the entire time before heading into the season. Be prepared to change your stance. And there's certain things that we should take into consideration. One of them, which is the 162 game schedule. And if it doesn't happen, will it be the type of schedule that we saw in 2020, which was that some teams played really bad teams, and some teams didn't play really bad teams. So the schedule was a little bit off. It wasn't the normal interleague type thing. We had the DH in both leagues. We're not sure if we're going to have that. I know that they're using that as a bargaining chip for the new player agreement that they have coming out. I don't know who's using it as a bargaining chip, since they both want it. I mean, everybody wants the universal DH, I think, because what's the point of a pitcher hitting anyway? They don't try to hit. They don't run the bases properly. It doesn't make the game any more interesting by having the pitcher hit, when the managers are telling the pitcher, like, some pitchers would love to hit, but they're told not to pull a muscle. They're told, like, don't act like Tanaka and, hurt both of your legs rounding third, or whatever it was that happened to him. You know what I mean? Just, they can't even bunt anymore. So what's the point of keeping them? Okay, I have this document up. I am going to make it bigger in a second. I want to talk to you also about Babs, which is a system that Ron Chandler came up with that I use religiously. And let me just check in and make sure everybody can hear me good. Pitchers can't even bunt anymore. Okay, so you can hear me. You can see me. Everything's good. J.R. Matz's wife and daughter are watching a girly movie and wanted you gone. Ooh, take that opportunity. Let's study fantasy. Okay, here we go. So first of all, let me just explain a little bit about what Babs is. It's a spreadsheet where you take a hitter and a pitcher, the players, you take their assets and their liabilities. So what normally you see is that we see projections every year with just assets. We know, how many home runs, how many stolen bases. We know like what to expect for that, but we don't really have anything so far besides Babs that's been around for like maybe this might be like the 4th or 5th year for Babs, but it hasn't really taken hold in the industry. So I've been using it, and it's one of those things where, like Lenny's chat room, you don't really want to share Lenny's podcast with your friends in your league, because if you do, they're using the same tool as you, and then you don't like have that one thing that they don't have. And so it's kind of like that. I want to share it with people because I think that it's a great way to look at players. In fact, Lenny and I were in the car on the road trip we were on our way driving down to Florida for labor draft, and I was listening to all of the new Babs information on audio, and of course Lenny's sitting right there. We're both in the front, and I'm trying to explain to him how useful Babs is, and it took me a while for him to like really understand. I think he gives, now he sees the good side of, seriously, you got to take into consideration the liabilities that a player has. If he's injury, how much of an injury risk is this guy? Does he just get hurt sometimes? Does he get hurt a ton of times? What happens when a player moves to a new ballpark? How much is that going to affect them? So there's all these little things. And just one second, let me get to this document. I will show you Bab's cheat sheet, and we will just look at, let's see if that, okay. So these are your skills variables. For the very top, the best you can get is with the plus sign. So P plus, S plus, A plus, E plus, K plus. All of those are the very highest you can get for assets. So a P plus would be like the guy with the most power, like Chris Davis, what Chris Davis used to be. Okay, either Chris Davis. They're both sucky now, but they both used to have like massive power. Okay, the S plus, that's for the guy with the fastest legs. A plus would be a guy with an excellent batting average. And then E and K are for pitchers. E is ERA and K is strikeouts. So if you see anything with a plus, that means that it's the top of the line, the top 10% of that skill. And then the next one is the top 25% of the skill, which would be power, PW, both capital. It's all capital letters. That's how I remember it. So the same exact stats, but it's all capitals. And then the third one, which is the third level, top 50% of that skill would be small case letters. And then they don't have anything if they don't qualify at all. Like if they don't do that stat, if they're not better than 50% of the rest of the crowd, then they don't have anything there. It's just blank. And so as you're drafting, you're wanting to get target number of these particular. So a P plus pretty much counts as either 2 or 3. It depends on how many people are in your league. But if you get a guy with a P plus, you can count 2 power for that guy. And you want to have minimums of each of those categories. So you want to have like 10 power for a 12-team league. When you're done with your draft, you want to have, actually, I don't have the cheat sheet in front of me, the whole thing, but you have a set number of like targets that you want to get. And so if you're done drafting and you have 10, you have the targets that you're looking for, then you have drafted by Babs. And let me tell you when I have drafted good teams, when I have drafted well-rounded teams with not too many liabilities, not too many, and a lot of assets, you will find that the players on your team don't look like the typical players, because how it works is that the players are grouped into skill sets. And I'm going to show you right now for hitting. That's pitching. Here's hitting. So you can see right here. I want to make sure you can see this all. Yeah, you can see right here. You can group together Freddie Freeman and Juan Soto. They're exactly the same player, except for the fact that Freddie Freeman gets injured more than Juan Soto. See this injury, the capital letter INJ, that's means that Freddie Freeman is at one of the bigger injury risks. The smaller lowercase letters would be Trey Turner. I don't know why he's less injury risk than Freeman, but it, like these two right here. So what I do is I go through and I highlight all the players without any liabilities, because that's what I'm targeting. Always I'm targeting guys with no liabilities or very few liabilities and full playing time. After you do that, I want to find a couple of players that we can put together. Okay, here's the same guy. This is Will Myers. Imagine this. Will Myers is he's top of the line power, according to Babs. And by the way, Babs predicted Fernando Tatis Jr. as the best player in baseball entering last season. And yes, it was only a 60-game season, but can you imagine? Nobody thought that Fernando Tatis was going to be the best hitter in baseball, the best offensive guy in baseball. And really, he is right up there with he compares to any other hitter. And these groups that Babs puts, so if you can't get Ronald Acuna, right? Look at Rhys Hoskins and Ronald Acuna. They're exactly the same. According to Babs, they're the same player because they both have top of the line power. They both have a little bit of speed, and they don't have none of these other boxes are marked. So this is, if you can't get Acuna, you can get Rhys Hoskins, and literally Babs thinks it's the same guy. It will give you the credit for the same amount of assets, liabilities, blah, blah, blah. I only just copied just part of this, but if you can see right here, Jose Ramirez and Eloy Jimenez, they have the same assets. They are both little injury risk here. It's right here at line 26 and 27. You can see Jose Ramirez and Eloy Jimenez. And their stats are right there, but this is how Babs works, and I think it's very, very helpful. Look at, I didn't even see Brandon Lau is on here. Brandon Lau has PW Capital, SBW, or SB Capital. That means he's got power and speed, decent amount. The small a means that his batting average is decent. And then the next column over is actually, wait, I don't see OBP on here anymore. Ron Chandler added a couple things to make it just that much better, which would be for lack of power. So like if you have a guy like D. Gordon, who he brought up in his example about why he was adding this extra asset statistic in here, because when you have a guy like D. Gordon and he shows up in Babs as a guy that has a lot of speed, and I can't remember exactly the stats for him, but the problem is that he lacks power completely. So there's a new stat in Babs that takes into consideration pitchers that don't strike out a lot of batters and don't have a horrible ERA but are mediocre. They're just mediocre, and they're not going to help you in either of those situations. So they actually get less credit. But let's stick with what we know here. I want to get through to you the different ways that you can value players. And this is actually this is the final this is the final stats for 2020, and this is how they finished the season for batters. And also we have on here for pitchers. Now, if you look at pitchers, you can see there's two assets, and no, they're all assets for pitchers. Unless you have, you're not going to see any liabilities in earned runs, but there is a negative earned run, which means that, the guy is like probably Robbie Ray or something like that, But here's the thing, the strikeouts, the saves, and the plus for earned run, these are all the top pitchers. But take a look here. You got Garrett Cole. He's the same guy as Giolito, which is the same guy as Aaron Nola, Luis Castillo. They're all the same guy. If you're drafting Babs, that's how it works. Shane Bieber and Trevor Bauer, Dinelson Lamet, Jacob deGrom, Kenta Maeda, Corbin Burns. Now, these are all the same guy according to Babs, and it just gives you a different outlook on this, the potential. When you see, though, take a look at Corbin Burns here. I highlighted him because we're going to talk about him today. I find him very fascinating. The M that you see under playing time means that he has never pitched a full season. You can't expect him to pitch a full season, whereas the rest of them in this group do have the ability to pitch a full season, 200 innings. Now, whether or not anybody does going into 2021 is up for grabs. We don't know for sure how that's going to play out. But because nobody pitched close to 200 innings, and if you believe in the Verducci effect and you believe that, you know, an increase of innings that's extreme is going to, it could hurt a pitcher, and you know these guys don't want to hurt their pitchers, God forbid. You know, they're super delicate beings, except for Bauer. He wants to pitch every fourth day. Whatever it is, according to Babs, Kenta Maeda is the same guy as Bauer, Lamet, DeGrom, and Bieber. Now, why Lamet is on here as a full-time pitcher, I don't know for sure. I don't think he's ever hit like anywhere close to 200 innings. I'm not positive of that, but I don't think he has yet. Either way, all of these guys, well, you look at Corbin Burns. Let's take a look at Corbin Burns' numbers. Corbin Burns is interesting guy because his, like, if you look at his FIP, you look at his stats. I should have put these stats up here on this other document, but you can see, well, I will tell you that he's had 3 seasons in the major leagues. He's not pitched that many innings in any of the 3 seasons, but the first season he was excellent. He had a 2.61 ERA. His FIP was higher than his ERA. It was 3.79, and his xFIP was 3.77. And then in 2019, he stunk so bad. He gave up so many home runs. Like, his ERA was 8.82. His FIP was a little bit better, but not very much, at 6.09. His xFIP, though, was 3.37. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. His WAR for the year was literally negative. Okay, he gave up so many home runs. His home run to fly ball. Let's talk about him. What happened in 2019? In 2019, he allowed 17 home runs in 49 innings, and it was horrible. He was giving up so many home runs, but he was still striking out a ton of batters, right? He was sent to the bullpen. In 2019, in his very first start, he struck out 12. He only walked 1, but he also gave up 3 home runs and allowed 6 hits, right? The very next start was, we thought that would just, the home runs was just a fluke. The very next start, he gave up another 3 home runs. Then the start after that, another 3 home runs. 3 starts in a row, he gave up 3 home runs, and then he gave up 2 home runs, and we're like, what the hell? He was off everybody's radar at that point, right? He was sent to the bullpen, first of all, and he did okay for a couple of weeks until he faced Atlanta, and they hit another 2 home runs off of him. So, and that was in less than 1 inning. They hit 2 home runs. So, 3 home runs in less than an inning. Okay, he still finished the season with 12.86 strikeouts per 9 innings, but 70 hits allowed and 17 home runs allowed in 49 innings. 38.6% fly ball, home run to fly ball. 38% of fly balls were going for home runs. It was a horrible rate. Highest home run to fly ball rate ever recorded by any pitcher with more than 40 innings. His batting average on balls in play was super high too. It was the fourth highest of all time. It was 414. It was literally 414, his batting average on balls in play. So, okay, he was getting a little bit unlucky, but it can't explain for everything that was wrong, especially all of those home runs, because batting average on balls in play doesn't have anything to do with the amount of home runs that you're giving up. So then now you come back to 2020, and here's this guy. He's pitched the best that he's pitched in his career so far. What changed? He gave up, let me tell you, he went from the highest home runs allowed to the lowest home runs. He finished 2020 with the lowest home runs allowed per 9 innings in baseball among pitchers who threw 30 innings, okay? And that includes relief pitchers. I made it super low. So, I mean, this guy, he was crazy good. He finished, his home run to fly ball ratio was 3.3%. It ranked second only to Tony Gonsolin. And he struck out 13.76 batters per 9 innings, ranked 4th, right behind Glasnow, Bieber, and Jacob deGrom. So actually, Kevin Gausman might be better than we're giving him credit for. Maybe Kevin Gausman deserves a little bit of love. We'll get to him like on a different day, because I do like him, but he shows up at the top for not giving up home runs, for striking out batters. Like, Kevin Gausman had a decent season last year. Anyway, back to Corbin Burns. 51 pitchers last year struck out more than 9 batters per 9 innings, that's a lot of pitchers. It seems like we were doing good with the strikeouts in 2020. Anyways, Corbin Burns induced ground balls 52% of the time. That ranks him top 20 in ground ball pitcher. Okay. The first 2 seasons, he used his 4-seam fastball a lot. But the problem is, see, everybody raves about Corbin Burns' spin rate. And because he's in the like either 90th or 99th percentile. He's like top of for the spin rate itself, it's high. It's really high on his 4-seam fastball. But the problem is that there's different types of spin rate. And the active spin rate is different than what he has, which is they compared it to a football spin, where like you put a certain spin on it's a transverse spin rate. So what it breaks down to is that Corbin Burns, even though his spin rate is huge, he doesn't have any movement on his fastball. His 4-seam fastball just went like straight over the plate, so it had no movement. And a lot of times what makes a spin rate effective to help you with pitching is that the spin rate kind of tells you how much late movement is going to be on the pitch. So we can measure movement on pitches, but we haven't been able to measure when that movement is happening. So let's say a pitch is coming at you, and all of a sudden at the very end, right before it gets to you, it drops. Like the later the movement, the better the rise or the drop in the pitch. If you are, just because it spins fast doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lot of movement. So that's something that I learned by studying Corbin Burns. They talked about the type of spin rate that he has. Anyway, the fact that his 4-seam fastball has no movement, it's just going straight over the plate, that's a problem. That's what's causing all of these home runs to happen, right? So they analyze what's going on. Not only that, but his 4-seam fastball did not differ from his slider enough to make a difference. So, that's because there's no movement, there's no change. Either way, the difference between the slider and the fastball, it wasn't enough. It was they weren't far enough apart to matter, because your off-speed pitches either have a lot more movement or they have a completely different velocity. It's one or the other. So unless he's throwing his off-speed pitches at like 80 miles an hour where his fastball is going 95 miles an hour, it's not really going to make that much of a difference unless it has a ton of movement on his pitches. Anyway, they figured out that they had him start throwing a 2-seam fastball instead of his 4-seam fastball. Now, in 2019, 85% of his pitches were either the 4-seam fastball or a slider. Now, that changed in 2020. He has good secondary pitches. He's got a cutter, he's got a slider, and he can use these pitches more effectively with using this 2-seam fastball, because the 2-seam fastball, he can put it where he wants to put it. So the difference between the 4-seam fastball and the 2-seam fastball, as far as like where he's locating the pitches, one goes right over the plate, and the other one is kind of like, it's down and in. If you're a right-handed batter, it would be down and in. So he's got this great location for his 2-seam fastball. So it's got movement, it's got he's got good location, good command, and this is what happened. So yes, this Corbin Burns is kind of a risky pitcher. I think that the earlier you draft, the better deal you're going to be able to get on this guy, because I have a feeling that they're going to start talking about him more and more. And as the draft season starts to happen, as we start to get into draft season, we're going to see this is going to be one of the names that starts going up the ADP like crazy. So the earlier drafting Corbin Burns, the better, because I think you'll be able to get him super late. He's not really on anybody's radar that much, but he is the number 2 pitcher in Milwaukee, right behind Brandon Woodruff. So in 2020, he only threw his 4-seam fastball 7.4% of the time. And in 2019, he threw it 53% of the time. But last year, he threw a sinker and a cutter. He threw the sinker 32% of the time and a cutter. Anyway, he just really was able to hone in on what he's good at. So you see pitchers that they don't use their best pitches. It's like everybody's drawn to using the fastball, the fastball, the fastball. What if your best pitch is not your fastball? Shouldn't you be using your best pitch? Shouldn't you be like, saying, well, I don't care if like the rest of the pitchers in baseball use their fastball the majority of the time. I'm going to use my best pitch the majority of the time. And it seems like that's what Corbin Burns has been able to do. Now, he hasn't pitched a ton of innings, so we don't have a lot to go by, but we can see by looking at his numbers that his fly ball percentage actually increased. Okay, last year was the highest fly ball percentage, so he's still allowing fly balls. You can't have like, okay, he's got 52% ground balls, so obviously his fly balls aren't crazy like crazy percentage of his hits, but the fly ball percentage did go up, but his home run to fly ball rate went from 38.6 to 4.7%. Can you even believe it? And his home runs per 9, they went from 3 home runs per 9 inning to 0.3 home runs per 9 innings, so less than 1 home run. The rest of his numbers looked like his left on base. I mean, in 2019, you can really see where not only did he have a 414 batting average on balls in play, but he also had only 57% of runners were left on base, which means that like everybody that got on base scored, and that's going to definitely regress back to normality, which it would be 80% left on base. That's the normal. And his batting average on balls in play did go back to normal. It was 285, which you can expect that to happen again. So now we have 3 partial seasons for Corbin Burns, and we can see by looking at these 3 that the outlier is 2019 at this point. He doesn't walk a ton of batters. He still could use like a little bit of work on the walks, but it's not horrible. And his FIP was 204 last year, and his xFIP was 299. His ERA was 211. So another thing was that when hitters were making contact with his four-seam fastball, they were hitting it like crazy. The exit velocity was huge. Like we talk about the home runs. Most of those home runs were given up on four-seam fastballs. He's not using that as much anymore. I think that we're going to see more good things coming from Corbin Burns. I don't even blame you if you don't agree with me, because it's like one of the articles at Fangraphs that I was reading that explained a lot of this in this article. Maybe it was Fangraphs, wherever it was. I like to read comments, and the comment was like, there's nothing that can explain. Wait, what did it say? It said something about, it was basically dogging on Corbin Burns, like he's not a great pitcher, basically. Now you can take it for what it is. These numbers they say what they say, and moving on. But as you can see in this chart here, Kenta Maeda is another one in this group of pitchers that you say to yourself, wow, Kenta Maeda, I mean, we knew that he's good, right? We know he's a decent pitcher. I'm not sure that he has yet to get the fantasy love that maybe he deserves. However, I've been kind of hesitant with Kenta Maeda because I feel like he hasn't been healthy, or he hasn't really pitched a full season. There's always something going on. He went from the Dodgers to the Twins this past season, and he pitched very good. Obviously, he pitched good. His K per 9 has always hovered right around 10, right? Right around 10. He had 10.8 last year. His walks are usually fairly low, but last year his walks were like non-existent. So, I mean, this guy, how old is Kenta Maeda? I'd be interested to know that because I don't see it on the stats that I have pulled up. Let me check it out. Corbin Burns is 26. So this guy's still young. Let's check out Maeda. I think let's see what we got. 32 for Maeda. See, that makes me hesitant. It just makes me hesitant for, he's going to be 33 going into this season. He turns 33 in April. So I just don't trust Kenta Maeda as much, even though, look, to Babs, it's the same guy as Shane Bieber. Bieber's an interesting case. They talk about Shane Bieber in the forecaster. They bring up Shane Bieber. They say, like, how much credence do you give to this year? What would have happened should we, if you, basically the stats for 2020 were, if you multiply those by 2.7, you would get 162 game season. And how much do you put into Shane Bieber crushing everybody? And like the fact that he pitched against a lot of low quality teams. Hi, Greg. Nice to see you. Calrona, nice to see you. J.R. Matt said that he likes to platoon guys like D. Gordon with guys like Max Muncy. And yeah, I mean, if you can get D. Gordon super late in drafts and has a job going at the time that you draft him, then you can get away with that. But God, D. Gordon is so iffy for playing time. For like, where's he going to play even? I don't know. But Max Muncy, he was kind of a disappointment. Nice to see you, dude. Okay, we're talking Corbin Burns. We're talking Babs. I'm showing you Babs right now on the video. You can see the very next group of pitchers would be Yu Darvish and Clayton Kershaw in the same group right here, except for it has Clayton Kershaw as a mid-time player and it has Yu Darvish as a full-time player. Yu Darvish was excellent last year. Why are they not giving him the highest percentage of strikeouts? I'm not really sure. But then you go down to the next group. You got Garrett Cole, who is Giolito, who is Aaron Nola, Luis Castillo, and Carlos Carrasco. These guys are all the same pitcher according to Babs. I just think that Babs is such a great tool for being able to see players and group players. So like if I don't get Garrett Cole, then maybe I could focus on getting Aaron Nola or Luis Castillo or another player. Now, if you look at hitting, we're going to scroll down to hitting here. Let me make sure you guys can see. I want to, there. Okay, let's look at hitting for a second. It's got Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman. I mean, these are their assets. There's a couple more different, like, of course, power, speed, average, right? These are the assets in the green and then the liabilities in the red. Injury experience is EX, so a lack of experience is a capital EX, and then a small E would be, a player that has some experience but maybe not full-time, like apparently Luke Voigt is falling into that category here. NW stands for new park, new atmosphere, which you can put in what you want for that. I thought the most interesting case example in this situation is the fact that Acuna is the same guy as Rhys Hoskins. I know he's not. I mean, I just know he's not. In fact, like Rhys Hoskins, the fact that he's getting stolen base credit is baffling to me because he only stole one base while Ronald Acuna stole 8 bases. And in a short season, think of that. That's 24 stolen bases versus 3 stolen bases if you multiply it by 3 for a full season. Like, if you prorated this, it would not put Babs would not be able to put Rhys Hoskins as a stolen base guy. I think because the season is so short. You have Mookie Betts and Fernando Tatis Jr. in the same exact category offensively. You see here that Tatis has less experience and he's a lot more of an injury risk than Mookie Betts. So you do have liabilities. Mookie Betts had a brand new park. But see, that's up to you. How much do you want to put into the fact that Mookie Betts was moving ballparks? I guess it depends. It's just nice to be able to see it in front of you. But yeah, going into 2021, Mookie Betts and Tatis, they have the same skill set. And they do. Look at their stats. Tatis had 17 homers. Betts had 16. Tatis stole 11 bases. Betts stole 10 bases. That makes sense, right? And then you have Jose Abreu and Marcell Ozuna and Dominic Smith. Look at Dominic Smith falling in here with these other 2 players. Ozuna, Abreu, and Dominic Smith, the same guy, asset-wise. They all have injury problems. No, Abreu doesn't have any injury. Abreu has 0 liabilities. I love players with 0 liabilities. Teoscar Hernandez, Douglas was saying he loves Teoscar Hernandez the other night. He has no liabilities. So, yes, he might not have Tatis strength in power or speed, but he has all three assets and zero liabilities, and that does matter because you want to keep those low. You look at Trevor Story, he's the same. Kyle Tucker is Trevor Story, but he's not Trevor Story because he's got a lack of experience. That's it, holding him back, a lack of experience. But according to their assets, their skill sets, they are the same guy, Kyle Tucker and Trevor Story. It kind of just gives you a different outlook on how to. So we're always trying to figure out, like, if I miss out on so-and-so, who can I get instead to make up in that category or whatever. And Babs is really helpful for this. Brandon Belt, this guy never has any liabilities. He never gets drafted, and he's always up here and grouped along with people that you just wouldn't think he would be grouped with, like Nelson Cruz and Will Myers, right? Brandon Belt, it's got him as the same guy. Nelson Cruz liability is his age. AG stands for his age. And then you could see the little stars, these little stars next to the stolen base category, OBP display. That's for on-base percentage leagues. And some guys who have maybe, obviously there's some guys that have a great OBP, but they don't have a great average, or vice versa. And that's what these little asterisks stand for. Dominic Smith, it looks to me like Babs thinks he's going to play every day. He had 177 at-bats in 2020. His home runs, 10. 316 batting average. No stolen bases, so that's why he doesn't have any kind of S here. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk. I just think that Babs is interesting, especially in a season like this, because it's really tough to figure out how to value these players. So let's talk about the what we saw in 2021. 3 true outcomes. It continues to rise. The number of 3 true outcome players, the 3 true outcome at bat. It's just, look at it. It went from 29% in 2011. Now it's at 36% for 3 true outcomes. Singles are still going. Singles, I don't know. It looks like they're going down, actually, as the 3 true outcome goes up. Singles are going down. I think Ron Chandler mentioned something about singles per at bat. I can't remember what he said, so I should not try to talk about it. These are the questions in the front of the Baseball Forecaster for next season, and they're the questions that were asked to all. It was a survey given to all the tout people, and I found just a couple of them interesting, the answers that came out of it. So how will you handle a guy like Shane Bieber? Okay, he was Fantasy Baseball's top overall earner in 2020. There's already talk that he could be the first pitcher off the board. I wouldn't doubt it. But take a look at how many pitchers we drafted high. Every year this happens. It doesn't just happen with pitchers either. It's notorious for the top first round picks to be the biggest disappointment. Maybe it's just because we put so much into their performance, because we draft them first. We expect them to be like really good. But what do you do with a guy like this who, okay, he didn't pitch that many innings. He pitched in 60 games. It says right here that, keep in mind, for Ryu was better than Shane Bieber's 2020 through 60 games in 2019. So you can have a guy who's going to be excellent for 60 games. What would have happened over a full season? Would he have gotten tired? Would he have been figured out? I don't think so. I mean, Bieber's already shown before that he's a good pitcher for sure. And so things like that, I don't see happening to him. But anything, like he did face a bunch of crappy teams. Garrett Cole was better in the final 3.5 months of 2019 than Shane Bieber was for 2020. Blake Snell had great 4 months in 2018. So how much do you put into it? 3% of the people responding to the survey is that his performance was so good that it will be tough to regress him much. I think that we can all kind of agree that, what do you guys think in the chat room? How much are you going to give to Shane Bieber? How much trust are you going to put in him as far as drafting him as the first pitcher off the board? Who else could be better? I don't know of anybody that could be better for to rely on in 2021. There's nobody like Max Scherzer, Verlander, all these guys, Chris Sale, they're all either or a combination of both older and over their prime or hurt and recovering from some kind of injury. So I think it's interesting that 66% of the people say that they're going to regress him like you would any full season extreme performance where you have one outlier season. And then 32% basically says, I plan to regress him more than normal, which means that they're going to use weighted stats for 2020, meaning that they're going to put less weight into 2020 stats, which we'll talk about in a second. But for power, you have this is the year, this is the total number of home runs hit overall through baseball, and this is the number of players with 20 or more and the number of players with 30 or more home runs. You can see here that what Ron Chandler did was he prorated 2022. He multiplied the totals by 2.7, giving him a full season. And we know it's not perfect, but it's what we're going to work with because it's just, you either completely disregard it or you have to figure out some way to prorate it to make it comparable to previous seasons. So still, home runs did go down. That I'm pretty sure we're using the 2019 ball or the 2018. I don't know which ball we're using, but it seems to me that home runs went back down some. The number of players that hit 30 home runs did not go down that much. It only went down by 5. So, and then 20 or more home runs, there was 119, whereas in 2019 there was 130 that hit 20 or more. That's a lot, right? Look at this. In 2011, only 68 batters hit 20 home runs. In 2019, 130 batters hit 20 home runs. So it's obviously, I mean, it just keeps going up and up and up. But you can see in 2017 and 2019, they were like extreme. And then, but 2020, now, I don't know. Because like, if you think about a guy like Luke Voit and you say he hit 22 home runs, well, let's multiply that by 2.7. And you have an unrealistic number of home runs. I mean, the guys, maybe he's Giancarlo Stanton, and Giancarlo Stanton hasn't even hit 10 home runs since he became a Yankee, but you know what I mean. Like, can Luke Voit hit 60? I don't think so. Or 66. I think he hit 22 home runs this year. So, no, we're probably not going to put him down for 66 homers. We're probably not. So, okay. But still, the number of home runs, regardless, went down. And probably even more than that if you consider the fact that a guy that hit 10 home runs in 2020, that puts him into the 30 home run category. And it's still lower than it was in 2019, which says that definitely power went down in 2020. There's a lot of things that could affect these stats. Obviously, there's a lot of stress. There's anxiety about the COVID. There is lots of new rules that they had to learn immediately. There was lots of games missed. There was lots of doubleheaders, which means that they're like the Phillies. The Phillies had the most doubleheaders in baseball, which means because they missed games, people got sick. So they postponed games. Now they have double headers, which now are 7 innings instead of 9 innings. So if you had a bunch of Phillies on your team, you lost a bunch of innings. Like just one player lost you 23 innings worth of offense. And teams like the Blue Jays, if you would have drafted Blue Jays, they only had one doubleheader all season. So, and they swept that doubleheader. So they, those guys had a lot more. I think that over time it will add up. They talk about making sure that you have players that are getting at bats. At bats lead to runs, and runs win leagues. And so the fact that you're losing 2 innings per every time you have, you're losing 4 innings every time you have a doubleheader. That over time is going to add up. If you had like 3 or 4 Phillies on your team, or Marlins, because they had a lot of them too. So did the Cardinals, a lot of doubleheaders. You're talking a lot of innings that you're not getting your offensive output for. So, there's a lot of things that affected last year. But I think that not using 2020 is a bad idea because you still do see trends. We're going to talk about JD Martinez because he had a horrible season last year, right? JD Martinez and Javi Baez also had a horrible season. Both were complaining about the fact that they couldn't watch video in the dugout as they couldn't watch video footage on their iPads. They were already talking about getting rid of that ability to do that because of the Astros cheating, and just like kind of invites you to cheat. But they didn't get to do it at all. So even, both of these players had a horrible offensive season, and both were complaining about the fact that they couldn't look at in-game stats, in-game video. And anyway, let's talk about stolen bases real quick. It looks to me like stolen bases are constantly going down. I think that's a direct effect of the fact that when there's so many power hitters, why would a manager risk getting an out when the next guy coming up is probably going to be able to hit him in instead of letting him run? There's very few batters or runners in baseball that are given the green light anymore because it's too much of a risk. Like, why risk getting an out when the next guy will hit you in? So we can pretty much tell. It looks to me like it's similar to 2019 as far as a prorated 2020. There was 29 hitters that stole 20 or more bases and 9 that stole 30 or more bases. And the year before, in 2019, there was 21 players that stole 20 bases or more and 8 who stole 30 or more. So the number of saves, the number of saves just keeps going down too. Look at this. There was in 2011, there was 19 closers that got 30 or more saves. 19. That's like everybody in the league gets one, and there's extra closers. Okay. So if you're in a 12-team league, you could literally have 2 guys on your team that will save more than 30 games each. 60 saves for 2 pitchers. And that's not even unreasonable back then. Now there's only 9, and that's not enough to cover a 12-team league. So one guy, there's definitely there is a shortage of closers, a shortage of saves going on. Even the number of 20 or more saves has gone down over the years. I mean, look, in 2011, the game was completely different when it comes to closers. You had 26 or 28 closers that got 20 saves or more. You had 19 who got 30 saves or more. And that is a shit ton of closers. And there was 49 that got at least 5 saves. So you could totally brush off getting a closer. And you could do like Lenny used to do, which is not pay money for closers in auction drafts, and then just get a couple of like wannabe closers or like second in line closers, and you would still be able to rack up enough saves to compete in that category. However, look now, only 9 with 30 or more saves. Even the year before that and the year before that, we were seeing very low numbers as far as the number of closers with a ton of saves. And then the numbers, 67 last year, 67 had at least 5 saves. 67. Whether or not you could even prorate that number, let's talk about 2019 and 2018 where we had full seasons. You can see that 53 closers had 5 saves, and then 50, let's say 50. There's 50 closers on draft day, 50 that will get at least 5 saves, and about 20 that will get at least 20 saves, and 10 that are going to get 30 saves. So that's a question. Where do you prioritize saves? What if you just drafted 4 guys that can each get 15 saves or 20 saves? If you drafted 3 guys that got 20 saves, because you really want to have these category targets, because as you are, you're putting together your category targets, you say to yourself, like, what do I need to do with stolen bases and saves? This is the 2 categories this is the 2 that I recommend doing this with. Where do I have to get to compete in that category and not come in last? But you don't really need to be at the top. You don't need to be the top 3 in saves. You just need to get enough saves so that you can fall somewhere in the middle, right? And what does that take? Well, I'm working on that too right now. Actually, I'm working on I've taken in all of the standings of the leagues, and I do this every year. But this year I figured out even better way. So I'm figuring out like where you know, and the one category, the 2 categories that are always the most random, they're always not, you can't really say that it's going to, you can say that runs is going to affect where you finish in your league, runs. And runs will tell you how many at bats you have. I mean, the guys that are getting at bats, they're getting runs. The runs is a big deal. Stolen bases, you could finish first place in your league, and the stolen base category, you can be anywhere from first in stolen bases to all the way to last in stolen bases and still finish first in your league. You don't want to do that, obviously, but how many stolen bases do you need to finish in like 7th out of 12th, you know, in the middle of the pack? You don't need that many. The difference between the guy in first base and stolen bases or saves is a big difference between the guy in the middle of the pack. So for saves, for instance, as long as you don't finish the league in the bottom 3, then you're doing okay. And what does it take to finish in the top 8 or 9? It takes like 40 saves. Because you know there's going to be a couple guys on the league that don't even get saves. They don't draft saves. They don't want saves. They finish with like 10 saves on the season or sometimes less than that. So if you get one decent closer, right? You get one guy that's going to get full-time saves. You are not finishing in the bottom of the saves category. However, saves are different than stolen bases because saves helps you in other ways. A lot of times these closers have a great ERA and whip. And so a lot of people will choose to draft them over a guy that's more risky in the ERA and whip department if you have spots on your roster that will allow it. Whatever. Just theories, just thoughts. So here's the weights of 2020. Now, 10% of the people said you should ignore it altogether. I think ignoring it is just stupid. I'm sorry, not stupid, but whatever non-offensive word you can come up with. Okay. I think it's putting yourself at a disadvantage to completely ignore the stats for last year. Although, so 77th, that's like the overwhelming majority of people that took the survey will weight 2020 as 1/3 or 1/2 of a full season. But here's the thing. These numbers right here are JD Martinez stats, okay? These are his stats. This is 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2020 prorated. You can see that, like, let's just forget about 2020. Let's just do the prorated numbers. And then the next thing is going to show you what happens to his stats if you weight the certain season. So 2020, if you weight 2020 at half, and then you weight 2000, and this is how you would do it in a normal full season. You would take the most recent season and put that as half of the weight. And then you would take 2019 and weigh it a little bit less, and 2018 a little bit less than that. But you would take these 3 years, okay, and you would average them out and look at the numbers. You could see the difference in weight from let's just say we're going to weight 2020 a lot less. We're going to weight it at 16.6%. We're going to weight 2019 at half, and then we're going to weight 2018 twice what we're giving in 2020. But look at the difference in the stats that we're going to get. It's not that big of a difference. So literally, because he was so bad, look at how bad he was in 2020. I mean, his batting average was 100 less than normal. His home runs were down pretty significant, and just the fact that he was horrible. This is obviously an outlier, right? Now, whether or not he's going to ever get it back, I don't know. I think he's a little old at this point. He's probably not ever going to go back to what he was. But is he going to be better than that? than a 213 batting average. Look at these stats though. When you're weighting these, it doesn't really matter how much weight you put into it. You could here you're weighting it very little, and here you're weight and the top one. I need a pointer. I really need a pointer. The top one you're rating a lot, and you're not getting that big of a difference. You're still getting the same number of stolen bases. You're getting relatively the same number of RBIs. I mean, the difference between 10 RBIs in a full season is not huge. So the point of this is that doesn't matter how much weight you put into it. It's not going to change things that much. It's not going to change his number of at-bats. It's not going to really change too much of his hits. It's just not going to change that drastically. So I think that when we talk about like how much weight do you put into 2020, it surprised me that it made that little of a difference when you weight them completely different. So regardless, the guys, as long as you're taking in more than one season, you're still going to get the same player, basically. Doesn't make that much of a difference. Prospects. What's the most reasonable method to project minor league prospects who didn't play last year? Or didn't play very much because there was no minor league. And yes, there was 60 man, was it 60 or 40 on the roster? I think it was 60 people total that they could have, and a lot less on their actual roster. But some of these prospects that it's horrible for them. I hope they were playing in their backyard or something. I hope they were going to the gym. We don't really know, okay, what they were doing in the off season. What was Marcus Stroman doing this offseason? What was, what was Buster Posey doing? He was raising two little babies. He has brand new babies. So, we probably know what he was doing. Buster Posey is like, it's going to be on a player by player basis. That is really, to me, it has to be based on that, because a guy like Buster Posey, you know what you're getting from him. This is not a prospect. So do you rank Buster Posey for the fact that he didn't play at all? Are you gonna judge him different than a guy that didn't play at all, who has very little experience and has proven himself not proven himself? This answer to this question about the prospects was very evenly distributed. Look, it's about 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And I would probably say, for me, for pitchers, I think I might be more harsh with a pitcher than I would for a hitter. I can't really explain it that much, because it shouldn't be like that. I shouldn't say that a pitcher not pitching is any worse off than a hitter not hitting. But it seems like if you're not keeping your arm exercised, you're not keeping your number of pitches that you're throwing. Like if you're not keeping that up and sustaining it, then it does dwindle. So let's see what they're saying in the chat room about this. J.R. Matz would draft Shane Bieber first, but he would rather wait to get Buehler. Buehler had a down season last year, so okay. We can definitely see where J.R. Matz puts. I think that you should hop on guys like Buehler, who had a bad season, and you can say, well, we know that Walker Buehler is a fairly good pitcher. I mean, one of the better pitchers in baseball. And I trust that he will come back after last year. There could be all these reasons why he didn't pitch that good, right? The first tier of pitchers is small. It's totally small. It's smaller than it's been. Where am I getting these stats? So this is coming out of the forecaster, and the prorated stats for 2020, they're not actual stats. They're multiplied by 2.7 just for the sake of doing these comparisons. Like, here's the actual stats of JD Martinez right here. And then you could see that the bottom row is 20 PR. That means that it's the prorated stats for 2020, meaning that they're multiplied by 2.7. So that's probably what you're asking me. But these are projections. These weights are projections. And then these projections are based on how much you weight 2020. How much do you weight these 3 seasons when you're making your projections? And really, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Whether you use 2020 as only 16% or you use it as 50%, they're pretty much the same numbers for JD Martinez. And he had a crazy bad year last year compared to his other 2 seasons. So either way, these are based on prorated stats for 2020. If you see the stats, they don't make sense. That's because they're prorated. These are the players that opted out. Now, it's a lot different than the prospects, okay? The prospects, there's a third, and a third for these answers pretty much. And then you see this one. 68% says that you're going to use an age-advanced version of the 2020 projections adjusted for current context. Whatever that means. What's the current context? 19% said that they would expect some rust, but I just thought that was interesting because obviously we're valuing prospects a lot different than we're valuing experienced players who took the season off. Or maybe it's because they chose to take the season off or had to take the season off. I'm not sure if that even matters, but it's just an interesting difference between the two groups of players, prospects and experienced major league players. Okay, take 2 players expected to post roughly comparable numbers in 2020, and all other variables being equal, one displayed marked skills improvement and the other displayed marked skills decline. How would you view those 60-game results as input? A lot of people, 52%, say that they would give more credence to the improvement in skills rather than. So basically they're saying, like, you had a bad season, we're going to brush it off. It was a stressful year. Like, we're just going to forget about it. More so than you would for a guy when you don't say to, oh, you had a great season, so, but we're not going to credit you for that. We're actually willing to give credit to a player's increase in skills more so than we are willing to judge him for a decrease in skills. I thought that was interesting. I feel like that's not, I'm not doing that. I don't think that I'm going to give more credit to a good season than I would to a bad season. I think it's important not to do that because we should only give so much credence to these stats regardless of whether it's a full season, a half season. Projections are very flawed a lot of the time. And so it's important to put some into a bad season or good season. I'm always really looking at why it happened. Like with Christian Yelich, I say, like, I will not draft him. I'm totally deathly afraid of him. I will not draft him because I don't know exactly what's wrong with him. I guess he did have a leg injury, but it makes me, like, when there's not a good reason why somebody went from great to horrible in one season, I just tend to think that it's probably based on injuries. And, 3% only give more credence to the skills decline, and I don't know why that is. Why is that? So JD Martinez, he sucked last year. He stunk bad. Nobody's going to hold that against him at all because only 3%. Boy, I'm not saying at all, but, less than you would give for a guy that was better, which could be very flawed too. Just because a guy was good for 60 games does not mean that he's going to be good for 162 games. It does not mean that. Just like we talked about earlier, there is a ton of baseball players that are very good for little stretches of the season, right? Especially young. If they just came up and they started hitting really good and for 60 games they hit excellent, I would be very cautious of them for next season because they just pitchers haven't had a chance, catchers haven't had a chance to analyze them that much. They've only seen them maybe face them one time. So as the season starts to go on and as the pitchers face these guys more, it's all going to be about whether or not they're going to make the needed adjustments to continue to full pitchers or hitters, vice versa, whatever. Half the people said they'd give roughly equal credence, but that's it, you guys. I am 1 hour and 4 minutes, and I hope that we all had a good learning lesson, or maybe let me get rid of this. Talking baseball, it's fun. We're putting together I'm starting to put together the draft guide. I love the fact that the baseball forecaster is out. I haven't even really started looking at the players, and I really do enjoy that. And I know Lenny says it's crazy, but that's what we do. So hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. Have a great weekend. Lenny will be here on Monday, and Roto Imbeciles will be here tomorrow at 6:30. And maybe Douglas, he's busy doing things right now, but he may or may not do a show. And that's it. We're going to put together some mock drafts soon, and enjoy the day.